Welcome back to the Working Moms Lab. I'm Bonnie, and today's episode is all about freedom, intention, and designing a life with purpose. Today's guest, Jill, is my yoga teacher. We met at a yoga studio in my neighborhood. Her class every Tuesday night is my non-negotiable self-care time. Even before I knew her story, I could tell she wasn't just a yoga teacher or teaching yoga. She was living something bigger, intentional, rooted, and designed. So today, it's my great pleasure to have Jill on the podcast. We'll be talking about what it really takes to become a life architect. Before we dive in, Jill, how would you introduce yourself in 3 sentences?
I would say I am a lover of yoga and travel. I am a mother to 2 beautiful children, and I am the matriarch and the captain of this ship that I'm steering in life.
That's very cool. I knew that you found yoga as your passion. And from there, you never looked back. And now you are leading international yoga retreats to all these amazing destinations. And you have 2 beautiful daughters. And you also are like doing Airbnb. Can you decouple for us? What do you do?
Yeah, and I think it would do us some service just to explain kind of how I got there. It wasn't always the case. I had, typical life before I kind of took over my life. I did 4 years of college, and then I got a job in my field. I was a retail buyer. My husband and I moved up to New York to be closer to more offerings for me. The retail market is in New York. And I actually was in that field for 10 years, and I loved it until I didn't. It was long enough that I had grown and evolved as a person, and I was no longer who I was when I began that journey. And the job had changed as well. So I was looking for a new chapter. I was no longer feeling fulfilled in my 9 to 5 daily grind. So I knew my husband and I were getting married, and he had just started his company. So part of the inspiration for me definitely came from being that close to an entrepreneur and having a lot of conversations with him about how he was going to change his life and take over his life. So his company started a few years before mine did. And I stayed with my salary and our health benefits for a few years so he could successfully start his company. And then I got really excited about, the new path that I wanted to take. And while he was starting his company, I needed a hobby. He was working a lot. So I decided to do a yoga teacher training. And really, initially, it was just something that was going to fill some time I had because he wasn't coming home until 10 at night. And then so much changed, right? You go to school and you learn, and it became more than just a hobby, more than just a passion. I realized this was a lifestyle that I wanted to follow. It was almost like a religion. I really was buying into the program. I loved it from, just being intentional about what you eat, being intentional about how you spend your time, being intentional about, relationships that you cultivate. I felt really aligned. So when we decided we were going to have children, we needed to have our first daughter on the company for financial reasons. But I had in the back of my mind that after I had my daughter, I was going to be with her, and I was going to move my life into this yoga teacher world, which was going to open up a lot more time for me to be with her. And then that's kind of how it all started. Becoming a mom shifted my priorities that were already shifting. And then everything else just kind of evolved. I think it's a mindset shift. When you change your mind from thinking that you're not a hard worker if you're not working 8 to 10 hours a day, and you start to take back your time and take back your life, then you start to think out of the box and start to find different avenues of income and different ways that you can spend your time that are more mindful.
So it sounds like time with the family and flexibility was a higher priority than making steady income at that time for you.
Yeah, correct. And I don't want to, make it seem like, it's so easy. We did it very carefully. My husband had started his company, and I stayed in my job until we felt comfortable enough with the money he was generating for me to take the leap of faith. So it was, carefully planned. But there was this period of time right after I left my job that I still remember. I was so grateful to have been able to leave. And I was being so careful with our money that I was, buying my daughter like Facebook Marketplace clothes, hand me down toys, because to me, it just didn't matter. Like the ability that I had to be with her was so much more important than having new clothes and having new toys. And
Right.
I knew it didn't matter to her and it didn't matter to me. And it was helping me have this new life.
That is amazing to hear. I was wondering like you didn't go from full-time sales or retail job to yoga retreat overnight or being a yoga teacher overnight. What did the first step look like for you? I think you mentioned you took a yoga teacher training, but then
I
what
did.
was the process was like?
Yeah, I had the yoga teacher training under my belt, and I was still working my retail job while teaching, like just substitute teaching. So I was like continuing to stay fresh with my yoga teaching while I was still working. And then I had that 3 months off for maternity leave. And of course, I spent the bulk of it just like snuggling my brand new baby. But I also had time. Our parents were coming up, they wanted to see the baby. So I started to teach a little more and a little more during those 3 months. And right at the end of my maternity leave, I got offered a permanent job at a yoga studio in Jersey City. And it was like Friday nights at 5:30 and Saturday at noon. And I accepted it. And I remember thinking, this is me taking the leap, because I will never be able to make it here Fridays at 5:30 if I'm continuing to work.
Right.
I had to go back to my job for 2 months just to quit, and to also give them some time to find someone to replace me, because I hadn't given them the time that they needed to replace me. So I went back for 2 months and just working like shortened hours, 11 to 3. And then after I was able to kind of let go of that chapter of my life, these companies, these large companies, they really like web you in, is what I found. They were keeping me there with not only bonuses, but also stock options that didn't vest for a few years and things like that. And so you would tell yourself, okay, after they vest, that's when I'm going to jump ship. But then they offer you more stock options that don't vest. So I really just, I cashed out my stock, cashed out my 401k, just had like a big chunk of money that was kind of our like just in case something happened with my husband. It's like hard to rely
Emergency
on.
fund.
Yes, and it's hard to rely on an entrepreneur, a brand new company. What if something happened and now we have this family? So we hung on to it and just had it like available to us if we needed it for maybe 6 months. And then we started to think, this isn't really the best use of this big chunk of money that we have. And a lot of things were going on. Our daughter was, starting to get older. We were realizing we were living in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, realizing, we want some more space for her. So we started thinking maybe we put this money into a upstate house for multiple reasons. One, to have as a weekender so that as she gets older, we have somewhere to go. And then secondly, we were thinking as like rental income. So that's just what we did. We bought a lake house. We were able to get a great price because we had all this cash that was liquid. And then something we didn't even know was going to benefit us. We were able to move up there during COVID, which was great. And during COVID, we did all these upgrades to the house that kind of needed to happen because we were there. And after we moved back to the city, the house was ready to go up and running for a rental. And I think now it's been almost 5 years that we've been renting that house, and we're just seeing, gains, annual gains each year. We get a little bit smarter. We upgrade the house a little bit. We up our prices a little bit, and it's been a really nice stream of income. I think I was telling you. So then a few years later, we decided to do it again. From the rental income from the first house, we had enough money to put a down payment on a second house. So now we're doing it times two.
I just want to mention that just reflecting what you shared with me, it all started from that inner feeling that this lifestyle wasn't working for me anymore. This job was not fulfilling anymore, not aligned with my value or what I want to create for my family. And you then carefully planned or strategically planned out with your husband. And it's a partnership. It's really a great partnership because he is entrepreneur and you supported him with the stability, and you were like the backbone of the family, I guess, that time. And then after he took off, you took the time to find your next chapter. It's just really beautiful how you supported each other. And I mean, how beautiful is that? You have lake house, you can go there for vacation, and then you're doing very flexible schedule with your yoga teaching. I was wondering.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
think it really that from kind of listening to you say that back to me, there is one like really strong piece of advice there, and it's one that I give to my daughters all the time. And it's just how important it is who you choose as a life partner, because they can either be the person that continues to support you in your dreams and help you rise to like the best version of yourself, or they can be someone who really holds you back and they really limit you, making you feel like your dreams and aspirations are too out of reach. And my husband and I are both very, big risk, big reward kind of people. We're not scared of that. I mean, we do it carefully, of course, especially now that we have kids. But yeah, I think that really goes back to just finding a life partner that has the same ideas as you, the same values as you, and can build you up rather than break you down. Because, my husband would say the same thing. He wouldn't really have been able to take his leap of faith and start his company if at the time I wasn't willing to kind of stay and be a support system, make sure we could keep making our mortgage and make sure that we could food shop and things like that. And then 5 years later, he was able to do the same thing for me. And this other topic that I know you and I spoke about that I want to kind of get into, and I want to be really careful about the words that I use, but just that how people feel about the traditional family lifestyle and how currently there's so much pressure for women to achieve everything in the workplace that men achieve and to do everything that men do and to be equals. And, believe me, I believe that we're absolutely equals. If not, I called myself the captain of our ship because the truth
Right.
is I'm really the one steering. And my husband is happy to have me steering. He likes me to be kind of in charge in that way. But I think sometimes we as women need to put value on some of the other things that we're doing in our home that sometimes we forget, because right, the truth is, even if we go and work the same hours as our husband, even if we bring home the same amount of money as our husbands or our partners, there's still a lot more that falls onto us, usually, right? A lot of the pressures for our kids, being there when they're sick, going to their school functions, packing their lunches, just buying their clothes, buying new shoes, all the things that go along with just supporting children, for at least for me, falls heavily on me. Also, just what's everyone eating for dinner tonight, and who did that grocery shopping, and those things were falling on my plate too. So it felt very comfortable for me to say, well, and then also just paying our bills and managing our house, right? Having people come, plumbers come, handymen come. So it was really easy for me to say, that's a huge chunk of our lives that I support. So if I'm going to do a really good job on those areas, then I have to step back from this area, because there's no way I can take on full-time job and those and do them well. And my husband was really on board with that. You know, a lot of times he would be here to say, it's easier for him to just go and do his job, you know, for the day, than to manage all of the unknowns that I have going on, and to be able to flip that hat. And that's not even really layering on the property managing that goes on when there's things that go on upstate, needing to manage the cleaners and the guests. And so yeah, I think women put a lot of pressure on themselves to do exactly what men do, and then also what traditional women roles are, and then they feel so burnt out.
That's absolutely true for me. Even though my husband is really supportive, and he and I, we split duties in childcare. But so for birthdays, you plan for birthday parties, and then like for their friends' birthdays, you think about what gift, right? You think about schedules, the weekend plans. This all fall under majority of the time mom's agenda. And I think what you mentioned about this traditional family setting, you bring a new perspective to it. Because I think those nuanced job duties or responsibilities was not written explicitly. If we have a job description of mom, wife versus husband, dad, right? We have such a long list, but oftentimes neglected or not putting enough emphasis on. And that mantra really helps me to live in the present moment, to just unload all the burdens, a lot of times is my own expectations on me. I have to do good in my job. I have to manage my emotion well in my job. But oftentimes I feel I lose my temper at home, and I feel so guilty about that.
Yes.
But later I understand why, because I have to hold it together in my job.
Right.
And I absolutely need the self-care light out to fill my cup, whether that's yoga, I'm a Christian, so whether that's my time with God, to make sure that I'm cared for before I can function well at home.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, in that long list of things that I was just saying that fall on the mom, right? I didn't even mention creating time and space to take care of yourself so you can be a good caregiver for the rest of your family. You know, and that also is time that you need to make available somehow in that long laundry list. And if you are one of the women that's also working, the laundry list just never ends. It's unachievable. And then what I found from talking to a lot of friends is that because it's just unachievable, they end up outsourcing a lot of that. And that was just something I didn't want to do. I would rather trade and do it myself and not make the money, because I found a lot of people that were working hard to make that money, they were just ending up paying it out so someone else could be doing some of those jobs because they couldn't. And some of them were the things I wanted to be there for. I wanted to be there for after school. I wanted to be there to create play dates or take my kids to birthday parties or, manage our calendar or even just do laundry and dishes and take care of my house.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing
It's
I
an
wanted to talk
intentional
about,
choice, though.
it's an intentional choice. Exactly. It's an intentional
Mm-hmm.
choice that not a lot of people feel they can wrap their arms around it. And I think I was telling you one time, when I first left my job, it was like I let go of everything. I didn't buy myself a piece of clothing for 3 years. Not that I couldn't, it was just, I didn't know if I could or not. I knew we were losing like a large amount of our household's income, and I wanted it to work so desperately that I didn't want to find us not being able to make it work because I was doing like luxuries. But, you know, you don't realize when you're going into an office the amount of money you spend on
Mm.
coffee, breakfast, lunch, nails, eyebrows, wardrobe, shoes, a lot of the things that are just upkeep for you to go
Right.
into the office. And when you pull back on all of that, that's a lot of money that you're now not spending. And I've been able
Wow.
to layer some of it back in, 7 years later after we found some other avenues of income. My husband's company is continuing to grow, things like that. So it's not a forever thing. It's just finding a way to pull back on your life to make this massive change, because things like that take sacrifice, of course.
Right.
And then you can find your way back to having some luxuries, and it
Yeah.
really just is when you decide what's important, it becomes that like priority list, like what is most important in your life.
Right. Absolutely. That's all about prioritization and action aligned with that prioritization.
Yeah. And when I left my company, the one thing that I was really nervous about was, am I not going to have the ability to travel anymore? Because that's always been, kind of a passion of mine. While I was working, my husband and I traveled the world. We were in Africa and New Zealand and everywhere. And it was easy because we had a lot of money to do it. We didn't have kids. We were both working. So then I'm thinking, did I really just give up a huge part of something I loved in life? Because is there going to be any money to travel? So then I really started to think, and that's where this whole like life architecture came from. This guy in my yoga class said it to me, a student. He said, "You really have great life architecture." And what that meant to me was my husband and I have built our life ourselves, piece by piece, wall by wall, the way that we wanted it, slowly, carefully, by pulling back and making our time our time. It's not someone else's time. We're not on someone else's clock. We don't owe someone else a certain amount of our time and energy. And I really sat down and did like a brainstorming bubble and put two huge things in the middle, maybe three huge things. At the time, it was like being a mom was, of course, my job, but I was trying to gain back another part of my life. And the two huge bubbles were yoga and travel. And how do I merge the two? How do I ensure that those two things have a big chunk of my time and energy? And that's really when I started looking at this yoga teacher at the time who I learned from, and she was a yoga retreat leader. So she offered this business of yoga teacher training in Morocco. And it was a 50-hour yoga teacher training, and it basically gave you the guts of what you needed to start running yoga retreats. And teaching yoga is very hard on your own to figure out a way to support yourself. So this was a really nice way to make up some of that income, was to run yoga retreats. So I went to Morocco and I took this teacher training, and I found a way to be able to make money and still continue to travel, which is something I love. And then now on top of that, layering in, I'm traveling, I'm creating space and teaching yoga. So it's just this really beautiful harmony of all the things that I love, and finding a way to financially do it without the traditional, or I'm sorry, without my income, my big, real job
Right.
income. So
That
that's been really beautiful.
that is so amazing. I follow your Instagram I traveled like virtually with you and a
Yeah.
retreat in Hawaii, and I believe you went to like South Asia or some
I went
fantastic
to Machu
places.
Picchu in Peru this year. I've been all over. I've done Costa Rica, I've done the south of France, I've done Spain. I mean, the list kind of goes on. And then I've done some really cool places in the US, Joshua Tree, Sedona, a little tiny island off the coast of Florida. So I'm constantly finding, and people will say to me, why don't you just repeat some of these trips? You put in all the work, you go scout the locations, you have all the
Right.
grounds people. Why aren't you repeating them? And a part of it is because this isn't just for business. This is also
It's for
for
you.
me to personally be able to travel and see the world, and then
Right.
be able to share that with some of my clients.
That is so beautiful. It's on my bucket list. Maybe 2026. I need to go on Jill's retreat.
I would love that. I'd love to have
Yeah,
you.
and you can choose the location, right? That's where you want to go. First and
Exactly.
foremost.
Exactly. Sometimes some of my clients will give me like a little like, hey, I'd love to go to this place. And then it's kind of on my radar if a few people are interested. But for the most part, I'm looking at places that I'm interested in going. And then as an entrepreneur, I have an LLC, so I'm able to write off all of my travel expenses. I usually take my family with me and we go scout the location. So I get to have this wonderful family
Yeah.
trip in cool places. And then I get to write off the expenses as a work expense because I'm there checking out yoga retreat centers, talking to chefs, looking at excursions, planning the whole trip. And then I get to go back again with a group of people and relive the experience and share some of the things I loved. So coming up, I have a trip in Iceland in October. I'm going to be, I haven't quite put this one out on my social media yet, but I also have one booked for Ireland for next year. And so I kind of slow release my trips. I'm usually 6 to 8 months ahead. I'll take the trip. And the other thing that works really nicely is my husband's company that he launched is a web design company. So he built me this website. So I'm able to post my upcoming retreats on my website, and it's a nice way for people to sign up.
Hmm. Oh,
So that works really nicely too.
yeah, I think it sounds easier than what it is. Like you host international retreat, you have to make sure the logistics is good. There's a chef and hotels, and even I was thinking about what about like health insurance, or what about if a guest or a client they fell sick during the trip? How have you been managing all these? Do you have a team?
No, up until this point, I'm still doing it myself. I'm a very careful planner and organizer, and that's part of the reason why I've never really hosted a retreat somewhere I haven't been, because I want to get there. I want to understand the elements. I want to understand what the trip could look like and what things I might have to kind of warn people about. Oh, we have a lot of driving, so there could be car sickness. The elevation is really high here. So, do you have any trouble breathing? Do you have panic attacks? What do you need to bring with you? A lot of the health things fall on the person. People have to sign a liability waiver to
Mm,
travel with me because they're traveling at their own risk. However, I'm speaking with them to understand some things that they may need so that I can be ahead of it. I also have people take out travel insurance. So if they can't go because of sickness, if they, God forbid, break a leg on the trip and need to go get cared for or need to leave the trip early, their traveler's insurance would take care of them. As a small business owner, I can't possibly take on that
mhm,
liability. So I
mhm,
do let people know they're traveling at their own risk.
mm,
I'll let them know this is what's available to you. This is how close we are to the nearest hospital, because sometimes people will want to know that. And then there's certain trips that I guide people away from if they are someone who is afraid of heights or has a history of panic attacks and things like that. then maybe if we're going on a trip and we're really out there in the jungle of Peru, that might not be the trip for them. Maybe a
Mm.
better trip would be to go to Sedona, where we're not so far away. And maybe we're not taking hikes that are putting us at really high altitudes and things like that. So I try and have personal conversations with people and make sure they're a good fit for the trip.
Hmm.
But you're right, it's a lot. And I'd say the largest thing, aside from managing all of my grounds people, so making sure that the chef shows up, and this has been trial and error. So there's been a lot of things I've had to work through, but managing the weather, being able to shuffle around things. If we're planning on taking a hike that day and instead it's torrential downpours, how do I manage that? But it's also managing the personalities and managing the group dynamic. That becomes a big part of my job, especially as the group gets larger. This last trip was 20 people in Hawaii. So, a big part of it is me kind of like being involved in all of these little groups that are forming and just making sure that the group dynamic is staying really uplifting and positive and supportive.
Wow, like you're a trip planner, you're a group counselor.
I told you I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, and how I'm curious, what is the biggest learning that you learn about yourself hosting these international retreats?
For me, it is that things are not going to go exactly as I plan, no matter how carefully, how many hours, how much forward thinking I've done to make sure that it all goes. There's certain things that I just can't plan for. Weather is one of them. So I have to really have backup plans, or I have to just set expectations properly, which has really been what I've chosen to do. So when I have conversations with people and they want to know, like, what's the retreat schedule? I may share something with them. I usually say your retreat schedule will be in your welcome bag when you arrive. But I also say to them, please don't get married to this schedule because this is a constant moving target. I am going to be working with my grounds people, looking at the weather, looking at different things that are going on, and just managing the trip so I can offer you the best trip possible. And at the end of the day, if we don't get to do something, like we were in Hawaii and on the schedule was to go see a sunset at Haleakala, the top of the volcano. And the day that we had it planned, it was not a good day. It was raining at Haleakala. It wasn't worth the trip. So we kept shifting it. And, the one day where the weather looked appealing, we were down at lower elevation. It was 75 degrees and sunny. We were doing a lei making workshop. Everyone was really relaxed. People were lounging at the pool. And I just decided to cut it because it just felt like a lot of effort, and it felt like people were really enjoying where they were at and what they were doing. And someone needed to make that decision. It's hard for people because they go, oh, that is something I wanted to do. So, I had to, if you ask everyone what they want to do, then you're going to get 20 different answers. And then that's no way to kind of lead the ship. So
Right.
I had to be the one that just kind of made the decision and hoped that people left and still felt like they had a really fulfilling retreat, even though one thing that was scheduled we weren't able to achieve.
I'm happy about your international retreat business. This is really amazing. You give a way for people to experience this world through the lens of yoga and deep connection. And I was curious, when you hosted your first international retreat, or like even local, was it time that you were worried that not enough people show up? What if like some logistics fell off? Like, how did you start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, before I launched my business, my husband and my first daughter, she was 1 and then she was 2. We spent a month in Spain, and then we spent a month in France. And the first trip we moved around using the Eurorail. That was a little more complicated, and we were a little bit more like pigeonholed into things because we had train tickets and we had Airbnbs booked. The second time we decided to use a camper van, which gave us a ton of flexibility. We were able to just stay somewhere if we wanted to stay. We were able to skip somewhere if the locals had told us, oh, that's not worth your trip, or, you know, something like that. So we explored these countries in depth. And while we were there, I checked out multiple retreat centers. It was a part of our month-long journey. And my husband, being an entrepreneur, it was amazing because he could just work from wherever we were, as long as we could get him Wi-Fi and a desk and a few hours a day. Truth be told, a lot of the people that work for him, his designers and his developers, are actually European. So he was actually more on their time when we were over there. So my first retreat I decided to host was in Spain, and this was in 2019. And the way I have run my retreat business, people run them very differently if you ask different retreat leaders. But for me, I decided to take the risk. And without having anyone signed up for the trip, I put my money down. You know, I really put my money where my mouth was. I felt like for my credibility, I didn't want to advertise trips that weren't going to happen, because I felt like people might look and say, oh yeah, didn't she say she was going to Spain? Did that trip ever happen? And then they might not be as confident to sign up for a future retreat of mine because it felt like I was kind of fluffy. So I was like, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm putting money down, my money, you know, personal money, and I'm going to try and sell it. So that first trip, I only sold, I think, 7 or 8 spaces. I had to discount a lot of retreats just to get people, because for me and my husband helping me understand how to be an entrepreneur, he's like, it's not about making money. It's about launching the trip, launching the company, also getting photography to sell future retreats, you know? So you may not even make money off this trip. It's just, the trip has to go down. So I think I made like a total of like $500 that trip, you know, after all of my expenses. I wasn't willing to leave my daughter, so I brought my mom to come and nanny my daughter for the trip, which was such a sweet element. Everybody kind of like loved her, like toddling around at breakfast, and it was great. And I learned a lot. It was an easier trip for me because the retreat center had a chef. So I didn't have to do, it wasn't so a la carte. It was kind of like, book with us and we'll take care of everything for you. We'll book your excursions. We'll take care of the food, of course, the rooming. They had a specific yoga shala for us. So it was great. It was a great first trip. You know, like I said, not a big money maker, but it launched. And then I just full steam, you know, I just went for it. The next year I launched France, and I learned a lot, and I was able to make a lot more money off the French retreats. I had different struggles on that one. I had to start to teach people the difference between a yoga retreat and a vacation, and how not to treat this as a vacation. And we are here having a group experience, and we are building something together every time we're in the yoga shala, every time we're doing a bike ride or a group experience or a meditation. You know, this is like a living thing that we're building, this group experience together. So I started to, I don't run dry retreats. I don't like to live in like black and white, but I did start to tell people like drinking is not a big part of this trip. So, you know, like it or don't, and then sign up or don't. But if that's important to you, then this might not be the right trip for you. A glass of wine or something at dinner, of course, but you know, getting drunk really takes away from what we're doing here, the inner work that we're doing here. It's clouding you. You're not able to dig as deep. You're doing surface level journaling. You're not really connecting to yourself. So I learned a lot from that trip also. And each trip, I think I learn a little bit more, and I'm able to really fine tune my offering. So each one seems to get better than the last, I think.
Right. So I really appreciate sharing that, because for a lot of not even working moms, but generally people want to follow their heart to something different. I think the first step is really the most difficult. But if we can have a spirit or a mindset of, let's just try it out, let's test, experiment, let's learn. From that experience, we unlock a different version of ourselves. Then the whole journey will be worth it. It's not all about the profit, the money.
Yeah. It's about building something and doing something that you love. And then, hopefully being able to make a living doing that. And I think also just putting yourself out there, I find that in a lot of ways in my life, that just being genuine and honest with people goes a really long way. Like that first retreat, everyone knew that was my first yoga retreat, and everyone was there really to support me and this new endeavor and this whole change of my life. And I think that's important too, not feeling like you need to be perfect, but really just putting yourself out there. Hey guys, I'm trying something new. This is my first yoga retreat. I'm so grateful you guys are here to be here with me. I'm also going to be learning along the way, and I'm so grateful for you. And at the end, I'm so grateful for your feedback as well, so that I can continue to grow and evolve my business.
Right. That's wonderful. So in our short conversations, you actually touch upon all the questions I want to ask.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and we talk about how to be our life architect and how to make it happen with careful planning, but even before that, just fully align with our values and build this partnership with our spouse or our family, have this support system. And it's not built one day. It's a process. And I think with the open mind, with this, living in the present, it will come to fruition one day. We just have to live this journey and be playful and enjoy the journey.
And believe in ourselves.
Believe in
really,
ourselves.
Just like we talk about the mantras in class, the more that you say positive self-talk to yourself, the more that you believe it, and then the more that you become it, right? So if you have a dream or a vision, keep telling yourself, I am capable, I can do this, one foot in front of the other. It's not always going to be forward motion. You may take one step back to take 3 steps forward, but if you continue to trust the process and believe in yourself and chase your dreams, right, you're capable of achieving anything.
That is so wonderful. Thank you, Jill. So as we are closer to the end, can we have a rapid fire round?
Yes, of course.
What is your favorite retreat destination so far?
Machu Picchu, Peru.
What is special about that location?
You are so deep into the jungle and so far from New York style living that you have to really let go of all the comforts of home and you become one with nature. It almost feels like you're like an animal, and it really is super cool.
A code or a mantra that keeps you going?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. I love that. Is there a morning ritual that you never skip?
If there's one thing I never skip, even if I'm living in a camper van for 15 days, I will do my skincare routine.
Lake or ocean? One thing your kids have taught you recently?
Stop trying to be perfect.
And what is something you no longer apologize for?
Oh, that's a good one. Maybe losing my cool sometimes.
Great. So that's a rapid fire round. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Let's have some closing reflections. If we're just to seal this conversation, like how you seal your class, what is a final thought?
I would say if you're someone who feels unhappy in your current life, you feel like too much of your day, too many hours of your week are doing something that you don't love, then you should really take some time, get away, a retreat or something, and do some inner work and start to put a pencil to paper. Figure out, it can start really easy. What do you love to do? How do you love to spend your time? What makes you feel fulfilled? And then from there, you start to say, how could I make money doing something like this? What are some occupations? And maybe they don't even exist, right? But maybe you're going to start doing them. How can you share something with the world? How can you create something that people would want to come to or buy, and create that vision? Then you have a dream, then you have a vision. And then from there, continuing with the journaling, what are the steps you have to take to get there? And then put a timeline with those steps. How long do we think it would take me to get to step 1 or step 2? Because like you said, it's a process. But when you're doing this, you're going to start to be happier because you see that there's a path that you're taking to become happier, to take back your time. And then of course, get anyone who's involved in your life, your partner, your family involved, so that you feel their support as well when you decide to finally take that jump. Because at some point there's going to be a little leap you're going to have to take that's going to feel really uncomfortable. And then after you take that leap, you're just going to have to trust. You're going to have to trust yourself. And if you fail the first time, that's okay. Do what you have to do. I have friends who run retreats, it's not working, they actually have to go back and get a job, make some more money, get some more in their savings account, and then they take the leap again. So then you trust the process and go from there.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you. That's really gold. Amazing. Jill, thank you so much for coming to the podcast. It's so nice to have you.
Thanks, Bonnie. Absolutely. Take care.